What's up, everyone? Welcome to an all-new episode of One-on-Ones. I'm Paul. I'm with Mike. This is episode 10. It's happened fast. That's 2.5 months worth of recording by design.
You didn't think we were going to make it, did you?
Well, let's talk about it. The origin of this show was yours, surprisingly. Some people come to me and they go, "How'd you get Mike to do a podcast?" I was like, "This was his idea. He convinced me to do it."
Yeah, you were just like, be careful what you wish for, man, because this thing is going to take a bench press and you got to do it every week. And You're right. Thankfully, we got Brett Roberts bench pressing it with us, right? But you got to create space for it. That's the hardest thing. But we got some cool stuff coming up. And, honestly, I like recapping the games with you. It's fun. And talking about the future of the PLL with our fans. It's really important to have that pipeline to them. And so I've been energized by it. When I come off of these, it's hard to get geared up because it's like, man, the prep, the work, setting up where we're going to be in the world. But then coming off of these afterwards, I'm actually pretty energized.
You feel good about them?
I feel great about them.
Yeah, it's great. I've got my Boston Cannons hat on right now. We're headed to Harvard in a few days. I'm training up to Boston from New York on Thursday, July 4th. I'm talking right now with Allie about whether to take the early train or the later train because I've never seen the Boston fireworks, but I think that will be my plan. I'm going to take an early train, find a seat somewhere in Cambridge to check out the Boston fireworks. Where are you going to be?
I'm unfortunately going to be at home waiting for baby number 2 to come in. So
do you guys have firework plans?
I don't know, honestly. I think that we just have to kind of wait around. Those parents that have waited for kids. You got to, the second one, if they say comes fast, so we got to sprint. We got to jump in a car and head straight to the hospital. So my bag's packed and I'm ready just to rock. So it could be any time. It could be during this podcast, and this podcast might be 6 minutes long. We don't know.
And then we got to go. Harvard, we're back there, which is a meaningful place for me. That's where I played my first home game for the Boston Cannons in 2008 in June when I was drafted. And those fans know how to show up. They know the game really well. Boston sports fans tend to have that reputation, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, hockey, or lacrosse. They know the nuance of the rules, and that audience and that venue has been deprived of the Cannons for 5 years, really, if you count COVID in the MLL year of 2020 being in Annapolis. So I'm excited to see the Cannons have their homecoming this weekend. I know Jerry Byrne, the head coach of Harvard, is fired up. We're expecting a nice crowd, and we'll potentially see a flip in the number one team in the Eastern Conference.
Totally. I mean, I remember Gillette semifinals last year before the Cannons were the Boston Cannons again, playing there. Those Cannons had a home crowd advantage, right? So I'm excited to see them come back to where they traditionally played, where you played with them, where you guys won championship there at Harvard. To see that fan base come back alive, I think is really important to the entire lacrosse ecosystem. And then you got guys like, Jerry Byrne, head coach of, like you mentioned, of the Crimson, and who's supporting us, who's all about it, who's, digging up new fans for us, not just the vintage fans. And, having that type of buy-in with head coaches of those stadiums that we go to is a big sort of opportunity for us.
Yeah, the first 3 homecoming weekends we've had, there have been pro lacrosse teams in those markets. So the Lizards in New York, the Hounds in Charlotte, and the Barrage in Philadelphia. I'm calling them off the top of my head. This is the first homecoming where the team that was native to the professional lacrosse market in Boston, the Cannons are there. To your point, there were fans at Gillette. They were getting Cannons chants last year before the team was assigned back to Boston. I'm really looking forward to what the Shield team has in store, what the fan base has ready once we see the games on Friday and Saturday night. And I'm expecting like the biggest pop we've had all season. I really am, out of this Cannons home crowd.
Totally. And hopefully we'll be able to continue to pay homage and storytell around the roots of the legacy Boston Cannons. It's the most legacy team we have at the league, and then also the ownership groups that laid the foundation down before us, right?
Yep.
Rob Hale, who's a PLL investor who owned that team for a long time in the MLL. And then there's some other guys. Who are some of those owners that laid the foundation down for you when you played for the Cannons? You remember any of those guys?
So one of the owners when I was there was Mark Dwyer. He made his fortune in real estate, and my first GM there was a gentleman named Mark Castrid, who then went over to the Boston Bruins. And then the next GM was Kevin Barney, who I played for and with for the next 5 or 6 years after that before being traded to New York. And it's Kevin's responsibility for trading me to New York. For all my Boston fans out there, I miss you guys, and I can't wait to be back. But Mark Dwyer was an owner that was on site for every game, and he'd sometimes come in the locker room before, definitely after, and either congratulate us or encourage us if we lost. A great dude. Hopefully, we can see him back at Harvard this weekend.
Totally. I think it's important for us to always remember that the tracks were laid down before we got here, and we still need the help from those guys that helped us bring the two leagues together. Guys like Mark or Rob, and so I'm glad we're able to. Hopefully, we'll get them out to the games, but it's important to pay respect to those guys. Speaking of paying respect, we just had Indigenous Heritage Weekend. You were there on site. I unfortunately couldn't be there. I think this was our most successful weekend, just from the active number of activations we're able to run to the authentic integrations with the locals there. And from your perspective, being on site, do you have a couple observations for the audience you could talk about?
Well, I think you're right. Top down, and it was an amazing weekend. And that began with our jerseys that were designed by Ojibwe artist Patrick Hunter, and the way that those were brought to life, first through our owned and operated media, then through Sports Center, then other coverage we got from Uninterrupted to Boardroom. People were talking about these uniforms, and they were so integrated very authentically into sort of the intentions and the meaning and the origin of the sport. That jumped out to me. I also want to give a shout out to our VP of media, Mark Brady, and his entire production team for the content that they were working on for months leading into this that you saw that was unique with each of the teams, whether it was the history of the Native American game in California to the New England region to New York. We were getting unique vantage points. We saw some of them come to life through halftime segments with Zed Williams and Kyle Jackson, and it was a masterclass of an activation on site coming to life online. And then you had mentioned PLL Assist being there with Eric Matthew and Tommy Goldman and working with the Anishinaabe to host halftime games of Begataway, and then after game clinics where we had folks like Matt Rambo come and operate as a coach. So it was spectacular, top to bottom. Even things like Origin keychains that were created and given out to lucky fans. A special weekend that, no doubt, whether you're watching on air, whether you're streaming them, whether you were there in person, spoke to the origins and the history of the game in such an integrated way. So I was very proud of everyone.
Dude, it starts with our colleagues, right? Like, they take this stuff very seriously. We try to educate ourselves. We spend a lot of time, particularly on the PLL assist side, working with different Native American tribes and trying to make ourselves more educated, and authentically work with them in the ways that they want to work with us. And a lot of that is, I think, comes to life in the stories that we're telling, right? And even whether it's on-site activations, some of the jerseys uniquely done with Patrick Hunter, or the halftime segments. The Zed Williams one. I was literally sitting there watching it with Leo, and like tearing up, and just he's such a important figure for what he stands for and how much the game means to him and how he's always honoring it. And he started the game with a wooden stick, right? It was pretty amazing to watch.
Yeah. There's probably no better, speaking of, way to see all of the preparation and the work that went into the weekend come to life with Zed starting the game with his traditional wooden stick, and even getting a ball and making a pass and cutting off ball with it before exchanging it out. And it was, as he said, it was gifted to him by a friend in his first time using it, and just an amazing tribute to his family and his ancestors and what we're able to luckily play today. So on Zed to the opening game, Mike, Maryland beats New York, which was an upset not many people saw coming. You and I were texting actually with Dad after the game on a group saying the masterclass that Stags continues to put together through the ebbs and flow of his career that also predates PLL when he was the head coach of some of the most talented Denver Outlaws teams. And then he was over with the Charlotte Hounds. Then he won his first professional lacrosse championship in year 1 and 2. And he's gone through a bit of a transformation with this team. And when you're up against it, coming off of an overtime win in Philadelphia with Matt Rambo, the native Philly boy, against the hometown Philadelphia Water Dogs, coached by the greatest coach in college history, Bill Tierney. How do you keep that momentum going against the 4-0 Atlas? Well, he made some big moves from a roster standpoint and really, I thought, controlled the pace of play. So you got to give a shout out to Stags, and the guy that I wanted to mention specifically was Levi Anderson, who has had a pretty challenging first 4 weeks as a rookie. This is the third team he's been on before actually getting his opportunity in the game to hit flow, and boy did he ever. I thought he was fantastic.
Totally. I mean, if you just think about this, the whips, right? Like what you said about the resume of Stags. I mean, and then you just look at they still have a core nucleus of champions, right? 2-time champions in the PLL. So you have Rambo, you have guys like Matt Dunn, Bernlor, who's continuing to be a mentor and guiding Krebs, Jake Bernhardt, right? Like Joe Nardella is back, right? Like you could just keep going. And yeah, Mueller, right? Like, there's just the list goes on, and so you still have this core of guys who know how to win championships and know how to win, and they just needed to taste. This is what Dad brought up to me, so not my original thought, but they just need to taste again what it's like to win again with this new group of guys, and then that veteran championship locker room with the leadership of Stags. I mean, Stags is just so all in. I mean, we had him jump on a call with a PLL staff, and then we had a Q&A, just our entire company asking Stags questions, right? Because what it's like to win back to back. What was it like to win in the bubble? What was it like to win the first ever PLL championship? Like, what do you do that's different? How do we have that same mindset? And he's really meticulous. He demands a high standard, and he is on all the time. Like, he's checking in on guys in the off season. Like, are they working out? He's making sure they're hitting their weight goals to stay in shape, and he's managing them and with them 24/7, which I think you start to see even with a new locker room, a new crop of rookies. I think he's one of the best we have. So we're big Stags guys over here, obviously.
Yep. And then to the other 3 games, Cannons beat Archers, which again many people were calling this a potential or forecasting this a potential championship game. This is the only time these two teams will meet, and the Cannons won 14-9. But the nuance there was both teams scored 9 times. The Cannons just had 5 2-pointers. 5 2-pointers was a PLL record. And to see that be a major unlock in the way that you have a 5-point difference in the outcome, yet the game was evenly matched, was a big one for me. And Mike Sisselberger actually showed his response to, frankly, some challenging first couple of weeks. And I thought he played really well. So we'll look to see how the Archers respond, but the Cannons were back on it and now heading into their homecoming weekend on a bit of a run. And what'd you think of that game?
I mean, for me, the Cannons are just so well coached, and they have great leadership, right? Marcus Holman, Asher Nolting is an emerging leader. Matt Kavanaugh's he's a champion, right? So you just have, and then you got Campbell lighting up top, so he's able to spread the offense a bit, open up the attackman. So from my perspective, and then their defense is nasty. They don't get enough credit on the defensive end. Epple's continuing to play well. He came back in shape, and he's looking great. So, look, they're really well coached. They're going to be formidable. Obviously, their homecoming weekend, we'll see if they can do 2 games in a weekend. I mean, but the Archers, man, they got Graham Hossick back. They're getting their feet underneath them. They have a nasty defense still with Cam and Warren back there. And Brett Dobson, I think, is still one of the best goalies in the league. And will always
easily
be one of the best goalies in the league. He's a champion, right? And he is so focused. I love him, and they're going to get their feet underneath them, and I'm not worried about the Archers.
Yeah. Yeah, well, again, like 9-9 score output. That was a physical game, the most physical game of the weekend. And then one the following day, which was the game for a team to fully emerge out from the bottom of the table. It was California and Denver, Redwoods versus Outlaws. And what we saw was another Outlaws team that's firing on all cylinders with more rookies. So Bundy Jr., the sharpshooter, who could probably bring it over 105, 110 miles an hour. We'll see if he gets the nod for the All-Star game fastest shot competition, but he caught fire. And we saw a more reserved Brennan O'Neill, but that shows the style of play that he has. He defers quite a bit in preference for the flow of the entire offense. And then when he needed to in the fourth quarter to create more separation, he got it and pump faked from the two, went on in there with his strong hand and bounced one. And then he set up another assist in the fourth quarter again to create some separation. But this Denver Outlaws team looks really, really good. We talked about Luke Weirman last week at the Face-Off X and going against TD Ireland and seeing sort of best in class and being able to hold his own. The Redwoods have a lot to sort out. Something that we talk about though is if you're going to sort out a team and you have a leader like Rob Pennell, you're in pretty good shape. You're in a lot better shape than teams had been in the past who are at the bottom of the table. But I would expect some big shakeups coming out of the Redwoods in hopes to securing their first win heading into All-Star break. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think look smart to get Romar back on the field. Two pointers kept him in the game, and he opens up the field. And I think you're right. There's no one better to have than Rob Pennell as a captain leading that team. He's one of the best players to ever play the game. He's got a great head on his shoulders, and he's really smart. Has high lacrosse EQ. They need to dig in, and they know that. And I think they need to put their arms around him and some of those other vets, and listen to Westberg's post game conference, and that's all you need to know, right? So that's in our app, and you can listen to the entire thing. So would encourage Redwoods fans to do so. On the Outlaws piece, look, there's something new about them, something different. Like you said, their defense is like last year. Their defense didn't feel fully like it did in 2022. But JT and Manley and Bernhardt, and then this new goalie, he's playing really well, right? He's stepping in for Scanoni, and he played really well. And so, and then obviously a Terafenko just blitzing himself up and down the field. I love watching. I love those guys. I love the offense. I'm a big Cross Ferreira guy. He plays so hard. So I think, like you said, with Bundy opening up, Sudan's getting his feet underneath them. They're a real formidable contender here in the West.
Yep. And it's not going to get easier for the Redwoods because they start this Boston Cannons homecoming weekend against the Boston Cannons on Friday, July 5th at 6 p.m. on ESPN Plus. So they're up against it, man. But they're going to have to step up, and that tends to be when teams do step up. And that'll take us to the last game of this weekend. So you had the Philadelphia Water Dogs and Carolina Chaos, and Coach Tierney getting his first win. First of many, I said online, for the legendary coach. This one came in Bill Tierney fashion. So holding a Carolina Chaos team, holding a PLL team to 6 goals is vintage 90s Princeton defense. And that masterclass that they put on, and by the way, Dylan Ward was outstanding in the net. He was saving everything, and the big ones too, right? Like we used to say, not all saves are created equal. You can have a save from 2-point land, but then if you're stuffing someone on the crease, I'd take the stuff on the crease any day of the week because those are momentum changers. Those are ones that you're not supposed to give up. And he was all over the place related to that. So the Water Dogs got their first win. I think the solve for Chaos, from my perspective, and this is consistent with the theme we talked about last week, which there is this huge surplus in attackmen in lacrosse, whether it's college or professional. And when I was growing up, the surplus in talent was actually on the midfielder side. And we could debate why that is, and I think it's primarily because the schematics of the game offensively have been changed. There's more two-man game. There's more operating out of the wings and from X, when I grew up consuming lacrosse, it was mostly top down. You started your offense with midfield dodgers. You could shoot on the run. So if you're a young kid now and you're watching college and pro and you're seeing the initiation coming from the wings and from behind, well, that's what you're going to practice when you're on your own in the backyard, and that's the type of player you're going to develop into. Anyway, that's my unproven theory. But the Chaos have Minikis, Ross Scott, Jules Henenberg. All three of those guys can beat any defender on the field at any given moment, but there's only one ball. And two of those guys at times are running out of the midfield. And so you got to wonder, when Minikis was turning the season around last year for Chaos, bringing him out of the midfield, and he had some great goals this weekend, bringing him out of the midfield, are you getting the reps you're getting? Jules isn't as good out of the midfield. Ross Scott, pure attackman, great dodger. And you even look upward at the New York Atlas. They brought in Peyton Cormier out of the midfield. Where does he fit as a natural attackman who, frankly, is probably one of the best off-ball finishers the game's seen, especially at the college level in the last 4 years. He set the record for most goals of all time. So you're seeing this bottleneck of attackmen playing midfield, and I think it's creating challenges for some of these teams, and these coaches, GMs have hard decisions in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, look, between the coaching staff of the Water Dogs and the Chaos, that they're going to get this stuff sorted out. Towers is a champion, right? He's not scared of digging in, making changes, opening things up. He's got a great roster. He'll dig in, and those guys you just can never. It's the Chaos, right? Like, you can never count them out, right? So they still got their vets. They still got champions in net with Blaze, and their whole defense is back, and they'll get this sorted. I'm not too concerned. And then the Water Dogs got the face off sorted, and you look at having Jack Hanna back was a big like you're saying, everyone's so focused on attack, but having great middies that can open things up opens up everyone else, and he's opened it up, and then you got guys like Kieran played really well, and Mikey, and it's just they're fun to watch. Like Kark said in the broadcast, they're built to win, and they have won. And so you got guys like Conrad and Kelly, they're just stacked. So I mean, it's a fun thing about what we're building is that ultimately the teams are hyper competitive. It's hard to make roster spots. We know that. But that's pro sports, and the games need to be competitive, and they are. And that's the way that we continue to build commercial viability in the long run. And I think we're doing a good job, and the players are playing at an all-time high.
Yeah, put it this way: last summer's gold medal winning Team USA had Brennan O'Neill and Michael Sowers running out of the midfield with Tom Schreiber. So what does that tell you? There's just more attackmen than there are midfielders from a talent standpoint. I will give flowers to Grant Ament because I actually think, and he might not fancy this, I think he's a better midfielder than he is attackman in this league. And that's a difficult decision that Bates is going to have to make, because I thought slotting Grant Ament into attack in the second half didn't help the team. Him coming out of the box is sort of this, this firefly that's just like setting up offense, demanding the ball, passing well, getting back on defense. I really like what he's done out of the midfield. So it's not all as easy as just saying attackman to play attack. There are some exceptions, but that would be sort of my last note on it. And Jack Hanna, man, to your point, I think he's a top 3 midfielder in the world. And so then if you put on Ryan Conrad and Connor Kelly with him, maybe the Atlas's midfield would contend for best in the league, but that's a triple power punch. And if you have Miles, Doc Sakin, and Brian Costabile, who finally cut loose here for New York, which was well-deserved and earned, there is some talent out of the midfield. It's been fun to watch. Now, before we get into questions, the games this weekend, Friday and Saturday night, 6 and 8:30 on Friday, 4:30 and 7 on Saturday. The 7 o'clock Saturday game, also the Boston Cannons, which are their home team, playing the Philadelphia Water Dogs. You get a Boston-Philly game. That's going to be on ESPN2. But from the top, the Redwoods take on the Cannons at 6 o'clock on Friday night. Then the Outlaws will play the New York Atlas, which will be a massive game where you take still the number one team in the league, taking on Brennan O'Neill and the up-and-coming Outlaws. Saturday begins with the Utah Archers against the Maryland Whipsnakes. Again, that's at 4:30. And then I mentioned the nightcap, Saturday, July 6th, 7 o'clock, ESPN2 and ESPN Plus, Water Dogs Cannons. Let's get to some questions.
Hey guys, this is Tyler in Charlotte. Go Chaos. I was calling because Paul already mentioned being a fan of the English Premier League. I was curious with the league going to a location model, if you guys have given any thought to having development academies like the top flight soccer teams do, and maybe would also help players stay in their local vicinity. So looking forward to hearing your answer, and love the PLL. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate that question. It's a great one, and I think we'll tag team it, Mike. So I'll just say from the first part, yes, big Premier League fan. Also like what Don Garber and MLS has done, and we have developmental academies. They do the same thing in Spain as they do France, as they do Germany. And frankly, those clubs are so developed and so far along their commercial path, kind of akin to, call it NFL teams, to where their investment into winning is so highly dependent on the next crop of talent that they have these developmental academies that, by the way, pull not only from domestic but international youth programs. And the goal is to basically say, okay, if we are Barcelona FC and we want to continue to dominate La Liga, how can we identify Lionel Messi in Argentina and get him into our program as a 9 or 11-year-old? So they have scouts, and then they bring them in, and those kids are full-time in these programs, youth markets, developing to hopefully be signed. And it's nuanced, right? The Prem does a good job of developing English talent. And then they try to keep the English talent. It's rare that you see some of the best Englishmen go over to Real Madrid like you have today, and even formerly with David Beckham. But for us, I would say lacrosse isn't quite, nor is the PLL, mature enough to have developmental academies. And when I say mature, it's at the youth level, at the high school level, at the college level, the professional, at the international level. We are also drafting from college, which is different than if you look at the Premier League or La Liga or the others. So the pipeline is pretty direct, where our coaches and GMs are watching the players at university and discerning on whether or not those players can be in their program. All that said, I'll pass over to Mike around what we're building from a PLL play standpoint, because it isn't apples to apples on development academies, such that, you might have a Joey Spallina growing up in Long Island and then signing with the New York Atlas as a 12-year-old, going through college at Syracuse, and then the rights to the New York Atlas out of school. But it is I think a really Americanized version of that, in that we are investing in youth lacrosse development.
Yeah. So on the PLL play side, to your point, we're really developing at the more grassroots and recreational level, where our academies are starting. But it doesn't mean that we won't, over time, take into account what the market is giving us, and potentially build better feeder systems for our pro teams. So, for example, the junior Utah Archers, we have that program running right now. We're doing that. And we have great leadership there locally, and Sid Thompson, and we're working on finding some Utah Archer players to be head coaches over time, as well. But, if that evolves over the next few years, and then depending upon what college sports gives us, right, which is a evolving ecosystem that no one really knows what college sports are going to look like, we might have to get more aggressive, right? We might have to take sort of things into our own hands and think about the future of recruitment, if college sports sort of devolves. But, hopefully it doesn't, because we're big proponents of NCAA, but it's something that, there is a model for that with what English Premier League does. And so, we're looking at that and studying that and trying to get smarter on it.
Last thing to add to that on the latest NCAA regulation is, I was in a meeting with the Big Ten commissioner, and I haven't seen language of this come out, but what he suggested to me is that partial scholarship sports like lacrosse will no longer be capped in the scholarship count that they can offer. So right now, as a partial scholarship sport at the Division I level, if you have the maximum scholarship allocation, it's 12.6 per team. And that 12.6 in way of scholarships get allocated across all four classes, 44 players, call it on average. So it's very rare that you have a player on a full ride, because then your total allotment for the other 43 players goes to 11.6. And there's a healthy contingency of Division I programs that don't have the full 12.6. So what the latest ruling suggests, potentially, and again, I haven't had this confirmed outside of from the commissioner, is that there will no longer be caps. So in theory, if you're Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Denver, Hopkins, Syracuse, you can offer 44 full rides. Here's why that's important. Where it comes from, I'm not quite sure. University, privately funded. Here's why it's important. When you're a young athlete, top caliber athlete in America right now, you are approaching sports in one of two ways, potentially both. Passion and love, alternatively, an opportunity to create a career and earn a lot of money doing it. And in lacrosse, if you are now offered a full ride for attending a university for being a top player, that is drastically different than what we've seen college lacrosse operate under over the last 5 to 10 decades. And that impact in way of top tier athletes playing this game as they ladder up to the PLL and we continue to increase wages as our business grows, I think we're going to be seeing a lot harder checks out of defenders, a lot faster dodgers out of the midfield and attack, and who knows where this game is going to go. We're already seeing it now with the caliber athlete, but a little nuance there that we're going to continue to study as we move forward and observe the college game.
Hey, Paul, it's number 22, Terry. And I was just wondering, in your book, where it says, take 100 shots a day, and you never miss a day. For defenders, what would be the correlation of that, Because you have attackmen that want to go D1, go pro one day, and they're taking all those shots to get better accuracy. But us defenders, we don't go coast to coast all the time. So what would be the equivalent?
What's up, Terry? I appreciate your question, and thanks for reading the book. I would say 10 years ago, your equivalent would be ground balls and footwork. Ground balls, they just can't be overstated how important they are for a game, and they come out of the defensive end, and with a long pull, you have an advantage because you're first to the ball. However, in the present moment, I would say take 100 shots. If you look at every defender to the name and number in the PLL right now, they can shoot well, they can shoot fast, they can shoot accurately. They are relied heavily on transition from the defensive to the offensive end. I've seen better transition plays out of long stick midfielders than I have out of D middies this year. So make no mistake about it. Your position is different than an offensive midfielder or offensive attackman. The note of the chapter was prescriptive to someone like myself because that was the best I could speak to. However, whether you're a defender in lacrosse, a lineman in football, a forward in hockey, a point guard in basketball, there is something that you have that makes you different from a skill standpoint from the rest of the crop. And if you can practice that every day, the compound growth that you get will pay off as you continue to pursue your dreams as being a college player or a pro player. So again, not limited to taking 100 shots. I also did probably 200 to 500 passes a day against the wall because that was arguably more important than shooting. But it was every day, which is the lesson. So what are you doing every day to get better?
Hey, Rabels. This is Jacob Heber, longtime Outlaws fan, back in the MLL days. Question, any chance in the future that we get a 4th of July kind of event in Mile High City? Because we all know that the Outlaws sold that box out. They made Mile High sold out and such for the 4th of July shows. Always a great time. Thank you. Bye.
I'll take this. Great question, Jacob. Your ears must be burning. Something we're talking a lot about recently. We're continuing to push the envelope on internally on how do we get more strategic, how do we get more aggressive with where we play games. And I think that, the 4th of July is a really great opportunity. You'll stay tuned for a cool announcement on the 4th of July for us that will pertain to this year. So we're going to make a cool announcement on the 4th of July this year, something really, really cool and patriotic. but we've done some 4th of July stuff. Like I believe 2 years ago we did a really cool activation and fireworks in Minneapolis, and then we've seen the attendance continue to grow. So investing and finding ways that when we do events on the 4th of July weekend or 4th of July, wherever it falls on the calendar, that we can try to do fireworks there. We did fireworks. I know it wasn't a 4th of July celebration in Charlotte this year after the weekend, which was awesome. Fireworks, there's a lot that goes into it. Making sure that we abide by local regulations. The stadium's cool with it, find the right, and safe operators, managing the cost and thinking through that. But the long-winded answer to your question is yes, this is something that we do now that the Outlaws are back. It's something that we're thinking about heavily, and stay tuned.
Yeah, I would say the exciting part about that, when I was playing in the MLL, I got to play in 2 of those games, the Outlaws fireworks games, is that they would put 30,000 people in, call it a 65,000 seat venue, but the whole lower bowl and the second bowl was filled. And I mentioned that 33,000 number because at the time, side by side, that was a greater attendance than what the Final Four had gone down to, which was 50,000 people down to 28, I think, at one point. Now it's making a run back up, and we're in full support of that. And we'll probably talk about it on a future episode, how we want to work with the NCAA around Final Four weekend leading into PLL week 1. All that said, I would love to play a July 4th game with the Denver Outlaws at home again, and I hope we do. A call out to the business as we continue to look forward is when you have ownership groups in market, and that could be in a single entity model like ours today, or it could be down the road if individuals own teams, is that you can unlock those moments like the Denver Broncos did, who used to own the Outlaws, where you essentially are selling tickets to a fireworks on July 4th to Broncos fans. And the nuance there is that most of the crowd would show up at halftime. But the cool thing is they were exposed to the greatest lacrosse game, or the greatest second half of a lacrosse game, that otherwise they wouldn't have seen. And they were building their fan base based on that. So as we think about growing our business and growing the PLL and exposing this amazing product to fans that haven't seen lacrosse before, these are ways to do it. So certainly on our radar. It's a great question. Mike, you want to take us out?
Yeah, I mean, we're excited for this weekend. Thank you for all the fan questions. We have a lot of fun announcements coming this week, and we're looking forward to seeing the Cannons back at Harvard Stadium this weekend for their homecoming. So appreciate all the listeners out there, and we'll see you on the road, and we'll see you soon.